following program is suitable for general audience of any age. The following program contains opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed without any censorship and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of TPS, the Public Square on Other Derana News Channel, where we discuss about the most relevant and pressing conversations that shape the political landscape of Sri Lanka. And now during these days, we have had the talk of the town, which is the national budget for the year 2026 and the second budget that is being proposed by the NPP government for the second time. And today's focus is going to be about the educational reforms because it's crucial for each and every citizen of Sri Lanka. And to discuss about this matter, I have two gentlemen over here. Towards my right, I have Mr. Eran Wickramarathne, former banker and parliamentarian. Welcome you to today's program.
Thank you.
And also towards my left, I have Professor Aruna Shanthaarachi from the National People's Power. Welcome you as well. All right, gentlemen, now getting into the discussion. The current 2026 budget allocates 301 billion rupees to the Ministry of Education. Now, first let me direct it to you, Professor. Now, when it comes to this share, it is slightly in the benchmark of the last year as well. There's no much significant change when it comes to the allocation of 301 billion for the Ministry of Education. Why is it stagnant from last year? Didn't you feel like there should be an increase with regards to whatever that has happened during the previous months since you all proposed the last year's budget?
Okay, thanks for inviting me to discuss the important topic of the education reform and the budget allocation for the education reforms. The figure is always should have to consider actually the comparative value rather than the absolute one, because as you mentioned that this year also governments allocate 301 billion rupees for the education. Compared to the last year, it was around 285 billions, the marginal improvement of that one. The figure is always depend on the activities proposed by the government. And also the particular figure always reflected by the country's economic stability and economic performance, because we always wish to allocate around 6%, 5% out of the GDP for the education. That is better. All we agree with that figure, because previously we also fight in that education expenditure should be around 6% of GDP. Because the developed countries, for Canada or USA, UK and New Zealand, Australia, all those countries' education expenditure is around 5% to 6% out of the GDP, but still our country is around 1 to 2%. But just if you look at the previous values, the average is 2.5% out of the GDP. So if we can actually increase that figure, is so better. I fully agree with that improvement. But particular value always we should have to consider based on the other economic condition and situation, because as you are aware that within last 5 years we had several economic problems, issues, and the first government actually last year given full priority for the economic stability. And once they reach the economic stability, they systematically move in from the other economic, the transformation and other the development process here. Now is applying for a development model, and also the last year proposed some education reform. It is not just like the curriculum change, it is total economic, it means education system change. So that economic systems, it means education system change also covering the four major pillars: The major one is curriculum development, and second one human resource development, and also third one infrastructure facilities. The fourth one monitor and evaluation process, and finally awareness program. Those are the 5 pillars government proposed for the education's development and education reform. So based on those activities, actually this year government proposed 301 billions. But so then, because the next year, the program is actually for a next couple of it mean year 1 to year 3 program, but the year 2026 just they try to implement the new curriculum to the syllabus here. So meantime, the government needs some infrastructure facility and also the human resource development. So therefore, focus in all those major areas, government the proposed to spend 301 billions for the next year. But the important point here now, not the allocation. The real expenditure is the most important, because for example, now is year 2023, the budget allocation is quite high, but unfortunately, just they spend for out of the budget is around 68%. So therefore, if the most important is actually not the allocation, is real expenditure. And also, we should have to consider that all other economic aspect, because as you know that the country is still facing the poverty. More than 23% is absolutely poverty line. Below the poverty line, it means, according to the latest informations, the per month expenditure per person is around 16,400 rupees in the poverty line, according to the Census and Statistics Department. And there are 24% below that poverty line. With the international values, it means a World Bank value, the per capita dollar is $3.65. The poverty line is, therefore, just we consider the international level, that value will be further high. So therefore, considering all those points here, but I feel that the maximum amount government can allocate for the education at the moment. But as the policy level, it means if the government can further increase systematically, or if government can further enhance the education expenditure, that is better. But considering all other factors, all others economic conditions, so I think this allocation is so enough for education, because the last year also just allocation 285 is quite improvement. And if we consider the last history, mean after independence, the average is around just 2 and 2.5% out of the GDP here. So therefore, we will see the important here now, not the allocation, is actually what are the activities they are going to be applied and how would be the impact of those activities. Those are the most important points.
Yes, Professor. Now, I believe in terms of the allocation is what the general public sees as well. And when it comes to a country, when it comes to a certain establishment, and specifically in Sri Lanka, health and education plays a very crucial role in it's a pivotal matter. Now, let me get into Mr. Eran. Now, when it comes to your idea about this allocation, now yes, it's just a number, 301, maybe not as much as last year, but then again the general public sees this number and it's crucial for them. They would think as to why it's just a little increase from last year, but there's so much of proposals, reforms that the government is coming about. Can they do with this little increase? Because people might not go in detail, they see these specific numbers only. What's your opinion about it?
As the Professor Aruna said, international benchmarks are like 4 to 6% of GDP on education, and Sri Lanka is currently about 1%, little under 1, slightly, just 1 decimal point more this year than last year. And if you take it in terms of budgetary allocations, The international benchmarks will be more like 15 to 20%. We are under 7. We were 6.5. It's gone up to about 6.7%. So from an allocations point of view, comparing it internationally, it's certainly low. Certainly there are challenges, because when you are doing a budget, you're always trying to figure out, what to increase, what to decrease, and that kind of thing. Now, I think that's where really you have to take some hard decisions, right? This government is the only government since 1977, when I was a schoolboy, right, which has got an overwhelming majority in parliament, right? And that time, people may agree, may disagree. Jaya Jayawardena moved the curve. He basically came from a more closed economy, and he said, I'm just going to open the system up. People might agree, disagree about the open economy, but he used his majority and the people's mandate to do a major shift on the economy. I think this is the government that has come with a big majority. People have given them a huge mandate. And I think that unlike others who have come in between, right, if they are going to do a major shift, right, this is the government that has to do it. And my personal view is that education must be a top priority. Sri Lanka is a small island, and we have one benefit we have is our geographical location. We are in the busiest sea route in the world kind of thing. So from a logistics kind of trading point of view, we are very well positioned. The other only advantage that this country can have is human resources, because we're a small population. And the only way we can excel and move forward is really by educating our population, educating our students. So it's a dramatic shift, which then means that to move it from 1%, forget 6, let's talk about 3, to get it into 3% of GDP, it's a major, major move. And as was said, it's difficult in a budgetary sense. That's where you will need some major decisions. Okay, because if you are going to really move the curve, you have to need some major decisions. So if you look at the budgetary allocations this year, the top ones are defense. Then you have infrastructure, roads, ports, airports, and so forth. And then you have the public services that are provided in the country. Those are the expenditures that are generally more than 10% of the total budgetary expenditures. So if it's like, I don't know about how you manage your house, right, or whether you're managing it, right? You have an income, you have an expenditure, and if you have kids, it gets even more complicated. Ultimately, you have income and expenditure. And it's a question of reallocation. So it's like you're getting 100,000 rupees a month, just for my example. I know you get a lot more than that, but you get 100,000 rupees a month, right? And if you go and put 75,000 on basically renting a house and only 25,000 for just eating, you won't be educating your children. So you make a hard choice. So what you do is you spend less on infrastructure and say, only 50,000 on infrastructure. Balance I'm putting it into education. It's a hard choice. National budgets are no different. You have some hard choices. And my view is, right, the high expenditure lines have to be reformed if you really want to make a dramatic shift into education and really put the money there. Hard decisions, not easy, but only this government can do it. And the reason this government can do it is because it has a mandate to actually shift the curve. And my view is that they should do it. So allocation certainly is one thing that we need to look at it. The other thing why I say that we should look at education in this particular way, I always say this about, defense and the public sector. Our defense is actually really internal, not external, because we are a small island. We are not going to go to war with India or China or some superpower or anything like that. Our real defense is our foreign policy. That's our real defense, you see. So because of that, right, we have to spend on defense, but it's on technology and it's on basically on intelligence. Those are absolutely necessary. There's no question for social stability, not to allow extremism to take in and all that. You need to do that. So you take the public service, right? I'm not against public servants when I say this, but I always think government should think about consumers and citizens first, not about employees. Because I've been in the private sector, I've been in government, right? One of those rare situations, right? And then you retire at some point, and the next 30 years you are going to be still a citizen. So think about the citizen, right? So if you think about the citizen, right, then your decision-making process is different. I'm talking about the public service. Everywhere I go, I hear a complaint. Somebody says, I went to the municipality. They're complaining. They couldn't get their garbage done or collected or whatever. Somebody says, I went to the UDA to get a plan passed. They said, come so many different approvals and are needed. Foreign direct investment, I mean, I've heard government ministers say it. So many approvals have to be got, right? So not really simplifying the process, right? So I challenge you, right, to say, do a survey with the public on the public service in this country. Take any public service and do it. I won't be surprised at the results you're going to get. So it needs public sector reform. So when I say reform these, you know what I'm saying? I'm really saying we need the best people in the public service. We are paying people poorly. Public servants, teachers are so poorly paid. Top professionals in the public service are poorly paid. Then we are complaining that they are migrating and they are going elsewhere. I'm saying have a very good public service with the best people, remunerate them well, but get rid of the numbers. I'm not blaming this government for that. In the past, governments just added people to the public service for political purposes. Completely deplorable. That should never have been done. And I'm saying now let's reform it, because there's a mandate that has been given. Let's reform it, retain the best people, take care of them, pay them well, because a country can't go beyond its public. So if you look at defense, you look at the public service, you look at infrastructure, put it in education, right? I'm saying in the long run, the results will be amazing.
Amazing, Mr. Eran. I believe that is very crucial, because I believe Sri Lanka is facing brain drain as well. And if we fix this root cause of providing the proper infrastructure, educational matters, as he mentioned as well, there is so much of optimism that the citizens of Sri Lanka can hold in terms of being a very educated and a powerful country. So let's get into the more concerns of the three pillars, from education, higher education and vocational studies as well. Before then, let's go in for a short commercial break. This is TPS, The Public Square. Welcome back to TPS, The Public Square, and we were discussing about the budget allocation for the educational reforms for the year 2026. Now, Professor Aruna, when it comes to, I believe, the three segments, as I mentioned before we went to the commercial break, education, higher education and the vocational training, you all have made sure that you address all these three pillars significantly. So let me get into this point. Now, when it comes to the funding, you all have increased the funding for higher education, including 11,000 million rupees for medical faculty development and 11,500 million rupees for university research. Now, in that context, while primary and secondary education allocations remain comparatively low, now, do you think these two segments are well balanced when you all came up with the allocations?
Yes, really. The two segments balancing is very, very important. That is correct. But this year is allocation is actually depend on the issues and requirement of the respective universities, higher education or the primary education. So, for example, now just think about now there are several medical faculties recently started, but unfortunately they don't have enough facilities, laboratories and all the professor units. So there are many the resources what they deficit, what they face, and therefore government immediately take actions to recover those issues. Actually, for example, now the Sabaragama University or Rajarata University, even though they start medical faculty, they are not fully by the technical progress, so that component here. So that's why governments identify those issues and the budget allocation given to rectify those issues here. And meantime, there are some important proposals made by the government. You know that one is the 9,000 millions, 9 billions allocate for the material allowances. This means for that's very important because year 2023, one of the survey done by the Census and Statistics Department, what they have identified that more than 55% of the students affected by the economic crisis, and out of that 55, more than 50% again, they have not purchased materials, stationeries as previously because of economic crisis. So based on that point, actually it is a detailed research, based on that point is government allocate 9,000 millions, 9 billions for the material purchasing, and that is very positive impact for the rural areas. So in real situation, they cannot purchase materials or the basic, the stationeries due to the lack of income actually, that because of the economic impact, So I think that proposal is very important. And also meantime, the government increased the Mahapola for the university students, and it was at 7,500, now
10,000.
it is 10,000. Yep. And you know that the minimum per month expenditure for the university students is around 35,000 per month for basic needs, So with this economic crisis, they are also facing different kind of trouble because we know that their behavior, their lifestyle, how they survive will end. We have some experience actually because some students, even 3 meals, they cannot, find it means sometime in the morning and only the night here, sometimes the lunch is actually they sacrifice, they don't have the money for that one. We know the situation. Therefore, this is one of the very important and very positive the decision that government took decision to increase that component, So the otherwise is they cannot continue the education actually is as it means without basic needs, So this is one of the very important points. And also the disabled students, another important decision for 5,000 rupees per month for a disabled students, and also very recently, the University Grant Commissions, but they have opened for all the faculties for the disabled student. Previously, it was only for the 4 faculties for the disabled student, but very recently, government opened all other faculties for the disabled students, and also now starting with this 5,000 rupees or whatever the kind of subsidy or the supportive schemes. So they also can start their education, and this is one of the good decision government took for the university level here. So this kind of is very important. The decisions the government took through this budget, and also this would be the positive impact on the higher education impact. And also I want to emphasize that some countries actually, some developed countries spending some significant component for the education like Canada or Australia or USA, UK or Belgium and Norway, right? But we should emphasize that they are spending some significant component for the education because they are charging for the education, not 100% free education for that. Good example for the Malaysia is not the free education. The government, state-funded education, 100% free education is very limited here. So in Sri Lankan context is where government is state-funded education and free education. And Australia, good example. Australia is, I think, third or fourth income generation process is the education. So education is, they always market the education and they are getting income here now, right? So therefore, the GDP component is quite high, more than 5 or 6. That is correct because they are earning from the education. Therefore, they should have to spend some significant component for the capital and infrastructure.
So I'm going to stop you there,
Yes,
Professor. Now, when it comes to Mr. Eran, do you agree to disagree with this whole situation I asked about in terms of balancing? Now, they have allocated a higher amount in terms of the higher education, but the base education, secondary and tertiary education is much more important as well. It's a balance. Do you think there's a mismatch in that context, or do you agree with Professor Aruna?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to be commenting on the specific amounts that have been allocated because I think we need a bit of a shift here. Now, we live in a society which is largely unequal. 22, 23 kind of statistics tell you that the top 1% in this country earn 20% of the pre-tax national income. And the bottom 50%, right, was about 20% of the national income. So for top 1%, 15%, bottom 50%, 20% plus of the pre-tax national income. So we live in a society like that. Then another issue that I think the government must address, that's a background issue, the government can address is, if you look at expenditure in schools, we have 350 or some number like that national schools. And you have a 10,000 plus provincial schools. And if you take the national budget, right, and you analyze how the expenditure is actually happening, 35%, nearly 35% of the expenditure goes to the national schools, right? And then 65% of the expenditure goes to the 95% of the provincial schools. This is the huge disparity. Now, I'm saying this seriously because I was the beneficiary of going to a national school. But then, that doesn't, I can't defend the system because I think the system has to be more equal. So, clearly there has to be a very close look at how does this actually happen? So naturally, if you're getting a lot of money and you're going to a top school, right, why are you going there? Because the range of subjects is going to be much greater. Teachers are going to be there for those subjects. They're not going to say we don't have a ICT teacher or we don't have a science teacher or physics teacher or something like that. They won't be saying that. So there is that issue is also actually there. Now, so we have a political issue, if I can put it like that, even more than education. You know, I don't agree with the system as it is. I don't agree. Because I think there has to be more equity in the system. Now, politically the decision has to be made then, how do we balance this between the schools in the provinces and how do you balance it with the schools which are called national schools? And I'm looking at it more from an equity kind of view, right? My father, right, went to a small school, right? We happened to live, right, down a road in Colombo in a rented accommodation. So my mom takes my brother to the closest temple there and heard that they're going to start a school. And then the priest in the temple says, Madam, there's a government school close by, first go there. If you don't get your child, you come back here, right? That school that the temple started today is one of the prominent big schools in Colombo, right? But my brother was taken by the big government school, right? So I automatically followed. They didn't ask at that point, come and show your deed, whether you own the house to actually go to that school. They didn't ask that, you see. So I got access to that school just purely on a rented accommodation. It was a question of access, And I benefited from that, and I benefited from that education, no old boy, old girl connection, nothing like that. And I really benefited from it. That's why I feel strongly about this. The equity argument, the access argument is very important. I don't buy this argument on free education. I don't. Because we have for too long, for 75 years, heard this argument on free education. We are educating everybody free, people are going into university free, but nobody is talking about the people who are not getting that education. You take, for example, the advanced level exam, right? I'm giving you statistics from 2022, right? I don't know what the 24 statistics or the 25, right? About 170,000 qualified to go to university in one way or the other. University took at that point 44,000 or some number like that. It may have increased a little bit now. Total university intake may be closer to 50,000. Nobody talks about the 130,000 who didn't go to university. Everybody talks about the 40,000 or 50,000 who goes to university. They go to university and some of them are brainwashed. They hold a board. They extend their 3-year degree to 5 years. They are not really hurting any government by doing that. They're hurting other students because other students are going to be deprived of a higher education. You see? So my issue is this. For me, really a free education is not rupees and cents. It's access to education. Every child should have an opportunity for education. But in Sri Lanka, it's limited. It's been limited, and it's been limited for decades. Why? Everybody said government must provide the education. So when it comes to universities, government had to provide it. When you get vocational training in the early years, government must provide it. When, right, you think about in even schools, government must provide it. It's not access to education. Right? So there are two things here. One is we take the resources we have and we give it to some people and they get educated completely free. I am also a beneficiary of that system. And then there are lots of people like us who've got a free education, and what do we do after a while? We say, bye-bye, I'm off to Australia, or I'm off to some other country because I'll take care of my family and my income. I defend the individual's right to decide where he wants to live or where he wants to work. I defend it. But then look at it from the taxpayers. Poor taxpayers paid for me. That's why I have an education like this. So that's why. Then some people say, oh, we'll bond them, we'll do this. I'm not for all of that nonsense. You know, I'm putting cases against people just because they go abroad, and it's not practical. We have lots of outstandings like that. Because I've sat in COPE for 15 years. Lots of outstandings like that. I'm saying just open the system. Right? I think it was, I was trying to think of his name, who has written a lot on this. One of the major problems has been the government trying to be the sole supplier of education. There's a demand, sole supplier of education. So the question we need to ask is, I said 40,000, 50,000 go in, 130,000 don't go in. What are we doing about the 130,000? I think what we should do is take the limited resources and think about the 170,000. Give the others the opportunity also. So some will go to the state university, others can go to other universities, give the others also. So the total grant is not given to a few. You give it to a larger. Others then get an interest-free loan to continue their education. So when I was State Minister of Finance under Mangala Samaravira, we were talking about this, and I told Mangala, this is so unfair that only some get it. Others also try, others don't get it. So what did we do? I said, Mangala, why don't we just give a loan to go to institutions which are UGC or Ministry of Education approved, not to any institution, approved. So the quality is taken care of that way. But if they don't get a state university that they can go there, interest-free loan, let's give it. And then I said, I'll go and talk to the Education Ministry and all. And you know what, Mangala smiled and told me, Eran, you go there, they'll appoint a committee or a commission. By the time the report comes, nothing will happen. So you know what we did? We put it in the budget speech, we gave the loan, 200 odd in the first year, now more than 10,000. I'm saying expand it to 100,000 students. That will create a more equal system with more people getting a higher education.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eran. I believe that was a very fresh perspective in terms of equity and equality as well, which we should practice in terms of education, and also a lot through the broader lens. I believe every one of us really need to seek and look up to. So let's go in for a short commercial break before we discuss about the final aspect of how these budget allocations and the reforms are going to contribute in the futuristic manner of the educational landscape of Sri Lanka. Let's go in for a short commercial break. This is TPS, the Public Square. Welcome back to TPS, the Public Square. We were discussing as to how the allocations work around and the futuristic aspect of the educational reforms that Sri Lanka could practice in the upcoming days. So now when it comes to Professor Aruna, now let's go in for the futuristic element and also the risk and the challenges. Now, as much as every one of us know, we know there are opportunities plus the challenges for the current government. Now, if there's one thing that you all are so sure about as the government for the allocation of education in this 2026 national budget, what is that one thing that we can see that will be evitable in terms of achieving?
Yes, actually just as previously Mr. Eran mentioned some equity case. I fully agree with this one because that is the one of the most important for the education is equity concept. And macro level equity and micro level equity, because I think he highlighted the macro level equity for the equal distribution of the budget and part is just I want to highlight that the government is now already starting to minimize the micro level equity. That's why the previously mentioned programs already implemented here, right? So secondly, so actually the government is there are many challenges at the moment, as you know that, because just after the economic stabilization, there are several sections government should look after here. Not only the education, but the priority should be given for education, that is correct. But the meantime for the health sector and also the education and not the infrastructure and investment factors. There are many areas government should have to look at. So, because the reason here now, the next year target is quite 6 or 7% economic growth. For that purpose here, the new investment, the foreign direct investment, that component is very, very important. And also the infrastructure or the restructuring existing education systems and the sustainability of that system is again depend on the economic stability. The government can propose the education restructuring the practices, but as you know that by 2028 government should have to start the repayment of the loan. Capital component is annual requirement for a 3.5 US billion additional requirement for the loan repayment. Therefore, everything should be balanced here, right? So that's why I'm always mentioned that please consider as this is as the comparative way, not just for an absolute value here, because not isolated component. This is the figure out, always compare with the other economic activities and performances. So therefore, this is the optimization, because the government looking for all the areas and also meantime just think about the digitalization and that component. Government spending billions of money for that part. That is all the part of the education actually. And the meantime governments allocate some the money for that is department level or ministry level training program, skill development. That is also part of the education, right? So therefore, all those component finally the link with the total expenditure for the education. Therefore, what my opinion is for this year is quite okay. It means the allocation is quite okay. Therefore, the government should now that carefully review and evaluate the expenditure pattern and follow up the way how the government spend the money, because most important here not the allocation is actually expenditure. Simple example, the last year Sabaragam University, my university, government allocate 600 million for the capital expenditure, Mr. Eran, but unfortunately university spent 64 million out of 164 million. Government allocation 600 million, but university spend is 164. What is the percentage here now? So just for very limited money for the research and development. Research and development is allocation is 8 millions. 8 millions, but real expenditure is up to that point is actually is 3.5. So that is therefore the department level, minister level, or the very important for the evaluations and monitorings and follow up the budget is, otherwise just government is allocation is not necessary. That is the most important part.
Thank you so much, Professor Aruna. I believe that is a positive note in terms of the government, and we are looking forward for every type of reform for a beneficial Sri Lanka. So as a final remark, Mr. Eran, what do you think? Do you see positivity in the educational reforms that are coming up? Because Professor mentioned about the certain additions when it comes to Mahapola and also getting the privilege of allowing the disabled students to have access and also medical facilities. With all these new additions, do you see a positive lane or path that the government is treading up to?
Yeah, so I think that we need to have a bit of a more rational shift. Before I became into politics, right, I was heading the National Development Bank. I remember I went to Moratuwa University and I said, you need more research, and your research needs to be tied to industry. So I went to the proposal and I said, why don't you create a chair of, right, bank, professor of entrepreneurship, right? And the university was very open to the idea. I went to the board of the bank. They were like shocked because they had to give their money for it, but the bank bought it as well. And the first a privately funded professorship of entrepreneurship at Moratuwa University was established, right? And the person who became the professor later went on to become the VC of the university. I won't mention names, but became the VC of the university. Today I hear that there are about 12 such chairs, and I'm so happy to hear it. So what's my point? My point is, right, not isolation. Research in particular, right, link it with the private sector, with industry, and get the funding in. It's absolutely important. The other point I would like to make, right, is that I believe that people are more important than technology. If I can explain it like this. We can have the most modern, best hospital. If I go there and the doctor is not there, all the technology is irrelevant. I'm just driving a point here. People are more important. Teachers are important. And in the manifesto that the government presented, right, apart from the 6% of GDP, and they very carefully worded it, they say incrementally we'll get there, right, but they need to do a lot more even to get incrementally to 3, right? And then they said that they want to make the teacher profession among the top 10 professions in the country, right? The Sri Lankan teacher on average is some of the lowest paid teachers, not in the world, even in this region. Low paid teachers, about less than the per capita income or equal to the per capita income, whereas in other countries it's 2 or 3 times the per capita income, right? So my thing would be is, I am all for digitalization. I'm all for it. I tried that 20 years ago. Created East Sri Lanka, created ICT agency. I was its first chairman. I'm all for technology. But the teacher must precede technology. So we need to invest. Better paid teachers, better paid, lots more, we should put a lot more investment in teacher training, right? And we should look at it. The government has done a few things. The few things they are doing, I'm not critical. I mean, anything is better than nothing. You see, I'm not critical. Right? Disability payment, I think it's a very good, right direction. I'll go further. I'll bring a law. Because on disability, like you take autism, there's a range. But that autistic child can't get into a regular government school. They won't be allowed. I'll bring a law saying that child has a right to go into a regular government school. So I think we have to go a lot further, and lots of laws need to be basically brought in to give those rights. So on the payments, whether it's the teacher payments or principal payments, I'm saying these are good, but I'm saying we need a lot more radical view. And I feel, like I said at the beginning, that J.R. Jayawardena decided it was the economy that he was going to prioritize and open it. I just feel that if we prioritize education because of the mandate that is there, and we actually put the resources there, and we push for it, because these opportunities don't always come when you get a 2/3 majority. If they don't do it radically, and normally governments are given only 2 years. After that, radical things are difficult because everybody's thinking about the next election. So 1 year is gone, and they have only 1 year. And I didn't see in this budget a radical movement. I didn't see. And I'm hoping that this year somehow or other that they will move radically. And vocational training is absolutely important. Again, I'm saying they separated some money for it. Don't think that the government alone can do it. We'll make this mistake, because vocations are mainly in the private sector and the non-governmental sector. Right? I'm saying use that money, encourage private sector who have vocational training, right? Encourage them, and implementation will be much quicker. VTA can go ahead, German Tech is doing a superb job, expand it. I'm all for that. But I'm saying if you really want to see a lot of change, and you really want to see a lot of people getting trained and trained quickly, allocations don't mean that necessarily it has to go into government, right? But think afresh. If you go particularly in a vocational training and you support the private sector, which is doing export businesses and all that, and allowing them to actually do it, you're going to see the results, and you're going to see the efficiency levels, and the returns are going to be much higher.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eran. I believe that is a fresh perspective as well, and also a lot of thinking and thought about how education is crucial. Just as I mentioned, health and education plays a very pivotal and a crucial role when it comes to the specificalities and the development of a country, because it is the citizens' health, it is the citizens' education that will take them to the development of economy and whatnot. So I want to thank Professor Aruna. Thank you so much for joining, and also Mr. Eran, thank you so much for joining. It was a privilege to have a very influential and a fruitful discussion. Don't forget to send your feedback to this program as well as all other programs to our email address feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. We will see you again with another episode where we discuss about the most potential and the crucial aspects of the political landscape of Sri Lanka. Till then, stay safe and have a good night.
Club arrogant like yeah, top like money so the girls just mail. One too many, y'all know me like 12. Look like cash and they all just there. Bottles, models, selling no shares. Fall out, cause that's the business. All out is so ridiculous. Zone out, so much attention. Scream out.